This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
This table is really tilted.
Excuse me? Am I gonna get a chance to speak?
Maybe I should take that back.
Denied. Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Take a giant step for mankind.
Welcome to the Tilted Table with your hosts, Sean and Joe.
Everything connects really well.
100%. Yep.
Folks, welcome to the Tilted Table, the internet's answer to a question that no one asked. My name is Sean Landon Clark. I am your co-pilot on this funky journey.
And I'm Joey Joe, aka the Fracky Mac, as your co-pilot.
So today, I thought we would start talking a bit about maybe old video games, since we brought up video games in a previous episode, at least briefly, if not more. I honestly don't remember. We keep doing so many shows. I can't tell whether or not we've talked about certain things at length. And of course, me and Joe being from an older generation, going back into the 80s, into the 90s, we played a lot of old video games. And I thought we would talk a little bit about our favorite games. You know, the ones that influenced us, changed us, ones that we may even still play today.
Mm-hmm. And do we have a qualifier? Are these arcade games like the stand-up quarter machines, or are we talking like console machines?
I think it would be open to either. If you wanted to talk about either, I think you could. I was leaning more on the old school arcade games.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
I just think because there's a set of games. I don't know if you think about the totality of arcade games from the 80s. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many do you think there were in total? Maybe 200?
Oh, man. Well,
300 at most?
I think there's more, actually.
I mean, over the span of, we're talking from the 70s all the way through the 80s into the 90s.
Yeah, I think there was more. So this past weekend, I was in Vegas, and I went to Omega Mart, Area 15, I guess they call it. And up on the second floor was a bar and a retro arcade game. Okay. So it was all the way from, like, do you remember Burger Time?
That's my favorite game. That's what I'm going to bring up. That's what I was going to bring up. That's the all-time greatest game.
It was, they had Burger Time, Q*bert. They actually had Mario Brothers, like the
original one.
The original Donkey Kong, like Pong. They had all of the Star Wars. They had that weird yoke thing.
Yeah, that was super dope. That one was also the sit-down version. You can get inside. It was like, supposedly like flying. The X-Wing fighter or whatever.
They had Tron.
Tron's a great game.
Mm-hmm. So it was like when I walked in, I just looked around, I'm like, holy mackerel, this is awesome. It was so nostalgic when I got my wallet out to put into even the change machine. I don't even know the last time I used a change machine.
Well, I play darts at bars, and they have change machines still in some of those places. So, yeah, that's old school. Yeah, put the dollar in and hope it doesn't eat it.
Mm-hmm, yep.
And then have to go to the manager and open it up.
Remember, you have to make it as flat as possible. Yep. No creases in the bill.
You had to, against the edge of the machine, get it all, crisp and straight. Bullshit.
Dude, I have not thought about that in 30-something years.
Oh, yeah. And then, you felt ripped off if you see a game and you want to play it and it wasn't a quarter, it was 50 cents. Mm-hmm. Or in some cases, $1. Some of the, the newer ones would come out if they were real popular. They would throw down, you had to put $1 in it.
It actually happened to me. So I put my bill in the change machine. And then now I've got like a fistful of tokens and I'm walking around like, okay, what games do I want to play? I saw Altered Beast.
Oh yeah, it's classic.
Classic. I mean, was that on the Genesis console?
Yeah, that was the included game in the Genesis console. Yep. And it was, I think, really popular or unique because when you morphed into the Beast, they had that transition scene. And it looked, I think they were going for a very much like it looked real.
Right.
Yeah, it had that realistic look, and people were fascinated that the graphics had gotten so good that, when you changed into the Beast.
Wasn't it 32-bit?
No. The Genesis was 16-bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So NES and those old consoles were 8-bit. So most of the games in the arcade, I think, were 16-bit. So 16-bit to 32-bit, depending on the game.
Got it.
So consoles didn't get close to arcade until the Genesis and the Super Nintendo came out. But by then they had been creating so many of their own games that weren't in arcades that I think the arcade thing kind of died out. And I remember when I first got an Atari 2600, most of the games popular in the arcades were all ported into the Atari 2600, and then you had the 2600 had their own library of games.
Right.
And of course that when it went over to the NES, the same thing. And anytime you had an arcade game on a console at home, you were hoping that the graphics were just as good, and they weren't. Not until around the Super NES and Genesis, but by then, games like Super Mario Brothers and Sonic, and they were creating their own games that sort of dwarfed the arcade games. So I don't think people were as obsessed with, I want to get a Burger Time or a Pac-Man and have it exactly the same on my console. By then, they pretty much, I think, were able to recreate it on a console. But then again, those games weren't the most popular games because the libraries had gotten so big.
Sure. It was funny as I put it in these
Tokens.
token into Altered Beast, and then I hit the player button, and then nothing happens. Like, oh, hold up. This is one of those that I got to keep feeding. And again, something being in a very nostalgic area, I hadn't even considered, feeding an arcade machine and losing tokens, and since I was like 10 years old.
Yeah, and it's such a trial and error thing because you would lose a lot of money. You don't know how to play the game, so you would put in, let's say it's an Altered Beast where you have to put in 50 cents. I mean, you're going to last maybe a minute or two, and then you're like, okay, now I got to learn how to play this game. So you're spending a bunch of money just to learn how to play the game, and by the time you get any good at it, you probably could have bought the machine and taken it home.
Right. One of the ones, and then I want to hear your Burger Time story. But another one was I had a lot of very fond memories of standing around with friends and all playing The Simpsons.
Oh yeah, it's a great game.
Fantastic game.
Yeah, the original one. I think they came out with a number of Simpsons games, but the original one was super dope. The graphics were great, and I was a big Simpsons fan. So when that came out, I was all over that. But by then, even that was probably already like a sophomore or junior in high school. It may have even been later. I don't know how much later from the debut of the show, but I remember playing it not in an arcade. I was probably like at a pizza place or something where they would have video games, but I remember playing that a bunch of times. But that was at the end of my run, where I wasn't really that into arcade games. But arcade games by then were, or arcades in general, that whole concept of an arcade pretty much were dying out.
So I want to hear your Burger Time story.
Well, I mean, I don't really have a story with Burger Time other than, if we're talking about old school games that were my favorites, Burger Time was by far my favorite game. I actually played Burger Time about 4 days ago. And you can just go online and look up these games. You don't have to, yeah, you don't have to download anything. It's all done through the browser.
Oh.
And you can play hundreds of these old games.
What was your Google search?
I think I just put like Burger Time online. And of course, there's a bunch of different sites. Some will be like the NES version. Some will be the arcade version and various ports. And I think the one that I clicked on, it said Midway. So I was like, well, that's the arcade version. It's going to be Midway. Yeah, Burger Time was my all-time favorite game. I played that thing to death. I probably spent a small fortune. I could have probably paid for college, the amount of money I dropped into that game. For people that don't know the game, and all these games are pretty much got similar concepts. If you know Pac-Man or Donkey Kong, they all have these sort of similar builds to them. So Burger Time was this game where you have multiple levels and ladders, so you can go up to these levels and move around. And at the very top are the top of hamburger buns. Second platform would be like lettuce. Third platform would be like tomatoes, and the burger. At the very bottom are the bottom of the bun. And you have to climb these ladders, and you run across, let's say at the top, it's a top bun, and it drops it down one level, and it knocks every other one down a level, and you have to keep moving across and build the burgers at the very bottom.
Okay.
And you're getting chased down by pickles, egg, sausage. These are the enemies. And you got these peppers. So when you're getting cornered, you can throw pepper into the enemy's face and it freezes them, and you can, bypass them. And that's basically the gist of the game. And of course, each time you move to the next level, the levels change. They get a little more crowded, where you have to go in very specific areas and you can get trapped easily. And of course, if you drop the bun down and it falls on top of an enemy, it'll crush them. And also, if you can get an enemy on the actual piece and drop it while they're standing like on the bun, it'll drop down multiple levels.
Oh.
So yeah, I love that game. And I mean, I played it as a kid, and then it probably was going for like decades, or at least it felt like decades. Obviously it's not decades, where I didn't play it at all. And I either stumbled across it, maybe I looked it up, I can't remember, and I played it again, and I started to realize how much that game is designed, and I think all the games are designed like this, that I got to a point where you hit the third or fourth level, and it's nearly impossible to win. You have so many peppers, and the more points you score, little icons will pop up. I think in Burger Time it was an ice cream cone would like pop up in the middle of the screen, and you'd have to run and get the ice cream cone that would give you another pepper. But it was only on screen for so long, and you never knew when it was going to appear. So when I get to like the third or fourth level, the way these levels are designed, there isn't a lot of movement. You have to go up very specific kind of ladders to get around, and the enemies are coming at you. And if you don't have any peppers, you're screwed. You're not going to win the game. So partly designed to take your money. Like I think a lot of these games are designed that it's going to get to a point where you're just not going to win. And of course, as a kid, you don't think of it that way.
You got to keep hitting it.
Yeah, you got to go back and try it again.
Mom, I need more money.
Yeah, and your parents, again, they probably spent a small fortune having kids play these games. The other thing I thought about it as an adult was a stoner must have created this game. Sitting in my head thinking, like, who created this? And of course, it's adults that created this game. And they're sitting there going, like, I'm just got this vision of them just, like, smoking weed. And be like, okay, man, check this out, bro. We're going to build burgers. What? Let me explain it to you, man. So we got this, like, character. And he's like a chef, right? And he's running across. And he's, like, building burgers. And, like, well, what's the enemy? Oh, man, like, eggs and pickles and sausages, man. I mean, that's how I envision this. Like, who comes up with this shit? Because if you think about Pac-Man, like, that's a pretty basic concept. It's a maze and dots and these ghosts chasing you.
Sure.
So it's like when you start getting into the realm of, like, Burger Time, I'm starting to think, like, yeah, there's some stoners in a room that came up with this. They probably had the munchies, and I was like, oh, man, hamburger sounds so good right now. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember this game. Do you remember Root Beer Tapper?
No.
You don't remember this game?
No.
Super popular. It was one of my favorite games. So the concept is that you're a bartender serving root beer. And so there's these long bars. I think there's 4 of them. And you use the joystick to move from, bar 1 down to bar 2 to bar 3, right?
Okay.
And up and down. And customers start coming down each of the bars. And you have to, go up and down and pour and sling it down the bar, right?
Okay.
The person gets it, they drink it, they put it down, and then the empty glass starts to slide back up towards you. So you have to keep the people from getting to the end by serving them. But at the same time, as they're returning the glasses, you have to move up and down the 4 bars and catch the glasses before they fall off.
What's it called?
It's called Root Beer Tapper.
Root Beer Tapper.
So
is this something you can play online?
Yeah, you can find it online for sure. I looked up that game and I played it, and I had the same thought. Is that like Root Beer Tapper? Well, obviously this is a game. They're trying to market it to kids. It can't be beer, but this is what it is. So I'm thinking like some booze hound created this game. I got an idea for a game. Right? So yeah, a lot of those little games as an adult, I look back on them and I start to feel like, yeah, there's some adults putting these games together, probably some hazy brain power going on due to drinking and drugs or whatever kind of elements they want to introduce. It's interesting to see these old games and realize how much of adult subject matter is inserted into them. Or maybe not necessarily, well, with Root Beer Tapper is inserted, I think. It's beer. But for like Burger Time, like the creation of it to me has to have stemmed from a bunch of guys getting high.
Some acid trip.
Yeah, some kind of crazy acid trip. What was your favorite game from that era?
So I think I always enjoyed games that you could play with friends. The very first one that pops in my head was Gauntlet. So it was, you could be
That's a great game.
Epic. Absolutely epic. If I was to get a stand-up arcade game for the house, that's the one that I would roll with. You could be the elf, Valkyrie, Thor, or Merlin.
Right.
Yeah, it was, and you would stack up all your quarters against the screen. Everybody, all your friends, and then you'd have some friends. Say there was like 8 of you, or you're a birthday party or something like that, and you would say, "I got next on Merlin." So I think it was a really cool communal game, and it's just fun. I played it again about a year ago, and it was exciting to me, even mid 40s. I thought it was great.
That was a great game. It's a top-down view. and you're running through castles, and all these ghosts and creatures are coming at you, and four players attacking all these enemies,
and you had unlimited ammunition, so you just like wail away on the buttons. And
because I recall, if I go by memory, that game, I mean, the amount of enemies coming at you was just like obscene.
Oh yeah,
just hundreds of them.
I call it a horde.
It was a horde.
The game that so I walked by in this bar in Vegas, and I was like, man, I don't know that I've ever seen an arcade version of it. And this game I played so much that it actually started messing with my head, and I was probably about like, I don't know, this is 1990-ish.
Tetris, yeah, classic.
Oh man, I played it so much that when I go grocery shopping with my mom, and this is like I say, like late 80s, 90s grocery stores, they all basically look the same, had the same like weird floor tile laminate.
Sure.
And they were all squares. I remember this.
Yeah.
And I started to see patterns in the grocery store tiles because I was playing this game way too much. Let's see, another early one, like I say, in the same playing with other people, Rampage.
Yeah, Rampage is a dope game. That was definitely one of my favorites too. Yeah, that's a game where you are a Godzilla type character. You could be like an ape. I think one was like a giant lizard.
You could be like Godzilla. You could be the Wolfman.
And there's these buildings, and you crawl up the side of the building and you smash the living hell out of them to bring them down. And then there's people in the windows, and you can grab them and eat them.
Yep.
So, yeah. And then there were helicopters that would come into the screen, and you could punch the helicopters down because they're shooting at you. Yeah, Rampage is a dope game, and they have that on Arcade 1-Up.
Okay.
What about Golden Axe? You remember Golden Axe?
I do. Wow, dude, that's a blast from the past. Wow. Man,
it's always a fun one.
I say I feel like I'm 8 years old right now. Golden Axe, and the actual artwork or the cover art on that was really cool.
Yeah, that was a fun game, and those types of games I was never really into. That game in particular, that was really, really fun. But that was also one of the, I think, first games where you could change weapons out real easy. There's a bunch of different weapons would hit the ground. You could pick them up. Much like Gauntlet, there were a number of characters you could choose from. And I think it probably stemmed from Double Dragon, which is one of my all-time favorite games.
All-time favorite, yes.
And that was groundbreaking when it came out. And that's a game where you play a street guy, and your girlfriend gets kidnapped by the big bad guy, and you basically are walking down the street. Each level is, kind of walking down the street.
And you can play with a partner.
Yeah, you can play with a partner, and thugs come out, and they have baseball bats and knives, and you just...
Barrels?
Barrels. You just beat the hell out of them. And you can, throw them over your shoulder. So it's one of those, it's the original beat 'em up game. And again, it was, I think, groundbreaking for its time because people hadn't seen games like that. I guess at its core, it's, pretty violent. And it was humans, beating each other up. It wasn't wizards. It wasn't Mario jumping over, barrels.
And the scenes changed. You'd be like in a train yard.
Yeah.
You would be on a bus. You'd be on elevators, versus like being on, say a Burger Time or a Tetris where you're just on one screen and things are changing within the screen.
Right. Yeah.
So it had a little narrative to it. The one machine that there's only two that I played in this bar, but one of them I saw it and it was kind of like seeing like an old girlfriend across the room, and you're like, hey there. It was Terminator 2. Remember where you actually had like the MAC-10 machine guns?
Yeah, I remember that game. I didn't play it a whole lot.
Oh man!
But that was the straight shoot 'em up. The Terminators are popping up, right? And you're just taking them out.
And the machine guns actually shook.
Yeah.
And they had external speakers on the console, so it actually gave a lot more, atmosphere to the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my brother and I multiple times spending, I don't know, $40 in quarters, which is crazy. We'd spend there hours.
Do you remember Paperboy?
I did. They had that at this bar, Paperboy. Yeah. It had the weird like BMX handle deal is how you'd play it.
An interesting game, and the concept of the game is it had, I don't know how you would describe it, kind of a diagonal kind of screen. And the game starts, you're a paperboy. I swear to God, only in the 80s could you make a game about a job. And people will pay to do it. Like, I want to deliver newspapers. Let me play this game. And you would ride your bike, And at the beginning of the round or the first level or whatever, they would tell you all the houses that are subscribers and all the houses that are not. You see like a little color-coded strip of the street.
Right.
And then you'd have to go down that street and make sure you deliver paper to all the houses that are subscribed. But you can't, but this made the game great, was you could deliver a paper to anybody. So even the houses that weren't subscribed, you could throw like through their window. You could knock people over with the paper, all these little characters and stuff running around. And I thought that was fun. When you get to the end of the delivering the papers, then you would go on to like a road course with like ramps, right? And you get like bonus points or whatever. I love that game, but as an adult, I've played it a bunch of times and realize again, it's a game that is designed to take your money, because when you're riding down the street, you could be on the sidewalk or kind of in the street, but you can't really move that far to the right. So you have this very limited space where you can move back and forth, and there's a bunch of garbage coming at you. Dogs will come out chasing you. There's things in the road. There's cars parked on the side of the road. You got to move around them. I think in one level there's even like zombies that come out.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah, like these deserted houses or abandoned houses, and they'll chase you down. So it was a game that was designed that it got to a point where so many things are happening and you don't have a ton of movement, and the only weapon you have is your newspaper. So if somebody is coming at you and you got the right angle, you can throw a paper and knock them down. But like a dog and things, like they came out so fast, there's just no way, because you could speed up at the top of the screen, slow down to the bottom of the screen, but the screen always moves, and there was a very limited space. But that was a fun game. Just as an adult, thinking about like, I can't believe that we paid money so that we could
play a game about working.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Leave a like on the video. I know you're enjoying this. Can you shut up?
The internet's answer to a question that was never asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
One of the other games that was in this bar was the original Ninja Turtles, the 4-player stand-up.
Oh yeah, that's a great game.
That one, again, hours of, like summertime with friends. Like you'd be on I was on a swim team. And so I remember I swam first, and then my brother was younger, and so he swam in a different group. And then when he was done, we would walk down to the 7-Eleven and get a pina colada Slurpee, and then we would camp out on either the Ninja Turtles machine they had in the 7-Eleven or the original Street Fighter.
Isn't Ninja Turtles notoriously difficult game?
Yep.
I know I played it a bunch of times, but I didn't play it a lot. And I don't know, is it a specific level that's difficult? I don't know if you're flying or something.
Oh man, this is like back in the mists of my mind. You're right. There's something I haven't played it in 30 years. I don't know.
Did you ever play Ninja Gaiden?
Ninja Gaiden.
Yeah,
that was the one where you like had the little stars. You like.
No, you're thinking that's a different. Well, it may have had stars in that game, but I think you might be confusing that with Shinobi.
Oh,
Shinobi was
the
side scroller with the guy with the ninja stars.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Ninja Gaiden or Gaiden. I remember that was a big deal. Again, pre-internet, so you see the name on the marquee of the video game, and you pronounce it however you think it's pronounced. But I remember people like, no, it's Gaiden, no, it's Gaiden. And I'm sure today, if you looked up on the internet, there'd be somebody that tell you how it's pronounced. But that game, you were more of a ninja, so it was more hand-to-hand kind of combat. And I love that game because you could do all these cool flips. The motion of the characters were really good. Being able to walk up to somebody and just throw some straight up Bruce Lee style stuff. And of course you can crawl up walls and ninja stuff. So you can crouch down and hide. People can't see you. Things like that. That was a fun game. But that game was notoriously difficult. And I know that when you got to like the 3rd or 4th level, a lot of people just gave up. They couldn't pass it. I never saw one person ever beat that game. And generally speaking, if you're my age, you hung out at arcades all the time, all day long. There was always kids that could beat these games. Generally, they were older kids, the teenagers that play these games all the time. Probably a little more aware of how to beat them. I think when I was a kid, I never thought about like there is a pattern, there is a strategy.
Sure.
And the older kids had figured it out, and we used to have fun just watching some of the skilled players just run through these games.
Oh yeah,
and make it look easy.
You fast forward to today, and that's why you have like competitive gaming, and stadiums of people watching other people play the games. We just have a very primitive version of that. One of the things that I loved playing, but it's also got to be the most annoying background sound ever. I mean, I put it up there with like nails on chalkboard. Air hockey.
God.
It's fun to play for about 10 minutes, and then after that it's just all kinds of annoying. And if you're not playing it and you just have that clack 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 sound going on in the background, it's just no.
Yeah, it was super popular in the arcades. Yeah, if you had to stand next to it, that clacking noise was insane. I was never good at it. Same with the other the old school Russia versus America.
Oh yeah, the ice hockey one had that little blue or plastic canopy thing over the top of it. Yeah.
Basically foosball style. You know, the characters move back and forth, and you sit there and shoot that damn puck around and try to score on them. People would get like just angry with each other. You know, they're fighting each other over that game as they're losing.
Speaking of other people in arcades and talent levels, my brother used to play Area 51, but he would play with both guns, one in each hand.
Okay.
And he was actually really, really good at it.
Fucking Rambo over there.
Yeah, I know.
2 guns at once.
Yeah. I tried it. Like I said, I tried that one this past weekend, and I just figured I'd start pumping tokens and all these things. I didn't need to stand there and play them for a long time, but I thought just a couple of minutes would be like a fun flashback. And they did have an Area 51 machine, and it was exciting for about 5 minutes, and then I'm like, meh, zombies. Joust.
God, Joust is a great game. That's fucking hard to control the character. That's a game that if there was a game that was rigged, was Joust, because it was hard to fly the bird.
The ostrich.
Yeah, the ostrich, the bird. Well, the ostrich is still a bird, right? I was terrible at that game, but Joust was super fun. It was just really, really hard. So that took a lot of my money too, because I was convinced I could figure out how to play this game. And for those that don't know what Joust is, it's a really kooky kind of idea. So there's these ostrich, and you are a knight sitting on an ostrich, and they fly, and you spawn on the stage, and there's these floating platforms in various areas.
Yep.
And you have to fly, and you have to land on top of the enemy, knock them off their ostrich, and then when you do that, it's like a little egg will land, and you have to go run over the egg to destroy it, or it'll rehatch into the guy. And then another bird will come and pick them up, and now you have to deal with them again.
Right.
And there's usually 4 or 5 of these things flying around. But one thing I struggled with that game is when the more you hit the button, the faster your wings flap, which make you move faster. And it didn't take much. You just tapped it a little bit, and you started flying around. Of course, you're bouncing off of every platform. It was really, really hard to control the character, and you ended up just getting smacked by somebody else because you're flying around aimlessly as you can't control the bird. Or the ostrich, or whatever it is. That was a fun game. It was a cool concept. I think it was poorly designed, though.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't. I wouldn't put it in the pantheon of all-time greats, but it was, especially being a kid, and you get an opportunity, right? Like, number one, you had money to play, so you were excited just for that. And then if there was a free machine, because a lot of times arcades are packed. In those days, arcades were packed.
Yeah, if it was a popular game, you might as well just forget it.
Yep,
you might be standing there for hours.
And there'd be like a line, and someone would say, "I got next after you." And I think Joust was one of those. At least when I started going to arcades, it already been out for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like the one that was never used. And I think most people probably that played it got super frustrated. Like, yeah, man, I'm out of here. I got to go get something else.
That was a game that was definitely again, depending if you're an optimist, it was just poorly designed. If you're a pessimist, they designed it that way on purpose to take your money, because it was a fun game to play. And there was a game on the NES called Balloon Fight, which was the exact same concept. Much better game. You didn't fly around like a maniac. It was much easier to control your flight. And that was the same thing, basically. There was like these characters that had 2 balloons, and you had 2 balloons, and you hit them, you pop one, and you pop the second one, and then you got them. Yeah, you just got to land on top of them.
Well, I think this is a good place where we can jump from stand-up arcade games to... So I stop at the original Nintendo system. Like,
pretty much I did too.
Yeah, I didn't. After that, I didn't game. But I have very fond memories of the NES.
Yeah.
So let's go through some of our favorite NES games. Let's see, classic that I've wasted, I don't even know how many hours of my life, was the Zelda Gold cartridge.
Yeah, I mean, everyone did. I got that for Christmas. I played it basically for 2 days straight and solved it. I love the original Zelda.
Did you have the map?
I think it was like in the 7th grade. I don't remember. I remember getting it for Christmas, and I don't even think I opened up my other gifts. Like, I can tell by the wrapping it was the game cartridge, and that's what I wanted. Yeah, I played that thing for like 2 days straight, and I'm sure it came with the map, right?
No. Nintendo Power was the magazine, and there was a map that was in Nintendo Power.
Okay, so no, I didn't have Nintendo Power.
But one of the ones, or two of the cartridges that we had, and I never had the maps for the first one, was Metroid.
Metroid was a dope game.
It was super cool. Yeah, I spent hours, but I never beat it.
Oh, really?
Nope.
I beat it. I figured it out.
The other one that we had that I solved, I don't even think I solved it on accident, was Top Gun. Could you ever land your plane on the carrier?
That's been a point of contention for everybody. In the video game Top Gun, can you land the damn plane on the aircraft carrier?
I landed once, and the dumb thing about it was I wasn't even holding the controller. It was like someone said, like, Joe, go out in the garage and pick up whatever. So I literally just set my controller down because the plane was landing. I knew it was going to land anyways. As I reached for the door, I just looked over my shoulder at the small little TV screen, and the plane landed on the carrier, and I like exploded in joy. And again, I wasn't even touching the controller.
Well, maybe that's how you crack the code.
Just do nothing.
Just do nothing. If you do anything, you're going to crash. If you do nothing, you'll land properly. The other thing about that game was when you had to refuel. Mm-hmm. So another plane would fly over you and drop down like a gas nozzle, and somehow you had to, line it up. And it was all about, you had that little panel that, had your altitude and your speed, and it would tell you to slow down or speed up or go up or down, and you had to hit that sweet spot. And what sucked about that was equally as hard to get the fuel.
Yes. And
it gave you, I don't know how many seconds, and then eventually the plane just flies off like, oh, you don't get any fuel, which means you're going to crash. You're not going to make it to the aircraft carrier. So what's the point of playing after that? You're just flying and shooting down enemies until you run out of gas. So yeah, Top Gun was a huge game. It wasn't a bad game. The graphics were pretty good, but everyone complained about the ability to land that damn jet on an aircraft carrier. And people always screwed it up.
And that same as a little bit after that, but then over on Sega, they had Afterburner.
No, that was a Super NES game.
Was it Super NES?
Yeah, that was on Super NES. Okay. Hold on, no, I'm wrong. I'm thinking of Star Fox.
Star Fox for sure was.
Okay, yeah. Afterburner. See, now in the arcade, Afterburner was a badass game. The graphics on that were so clean. I don't know. I'm sure I did play it on the NES, but I have no memory of it. I don't know how good the port was.
The Afterburner, like in the arcade, they had two versions. There's the regular stand-up one, and then in like Chuck E. Cheese or like Incredible Pizza or things like that, they had the sit down where the whole thing actually moved and kind of rocked back and forth.
And I think that was one of those dollar games.
Yep.
Yeah, that was one that was expensive. Graphics were really good. Yeah, the sit down. I mean, honestly, if you bought an OG arcade game for your house, the sit down ones were dope. You crawl inside those units. Ooh, they were super cool.
The other one that would be awesome if you did that, I forget the actual name of the game. Was it MotoGP? But it was where the motorcycle that you would sit on.
Yeah, that was MotoGP.
Yes,
yeah.
And then you kind of you'd be able to lean back and forth, and that's how you played the game.
Yeah, those came out a little bit later, but yeah, those were super cool. That's when games were, I think first thinking about somewhat being interactive. You're not just holding a joystick and flying a plane or riding a bike, or actually in a cockpit, or you're sitting on a motorcycle. People were enamored with that.
Yeah,
those were super cool.
I only played it a handful of times just because it was, I would always crash within the first 4 seconds, and then it kind of takes the joy out of it.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. There's a learning curve. Well, like with all these games.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally.
Rygar. I don't know if.
Ooh, yeah. Wow.
That was a cool game.
That game was awesome.
Getting my hands on that game was a complete, my mom's like, well, if you want to buy a game. And I'm super excited, but this was somewhat rare. My mother didn't have $60 to throw around every month, just to buy me a game. So I didn't know what to get. And, I'm looking at all these covers, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this guy, like a cool circular blade character. And I'm just like, I'm going to try this game. And that was a fun game.
Yes, Rygar was fantastic. Man, this is awesome, dude. I literally have not thought about some of these things since, I was a kid. I played Rygar at the roller skating rink. I remember they'd take us like on May, early June, right before class let out, a field trip to the roller skating rink. And I remember one year I didn't even put skates on. I just walked over to the Rygar machine and
just went for it.
Just hung out there for the afternoon.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw Rygar in the arcade. Not that I recall. I only played it on the NES, I think.
Well, there's an idea for you. You know, where you're talking about like starting a business or doing something interesting. You could do a script adaptation of Rygar, like straight to the movies.
No. Every time they adapt a game to a movie, it usually isn't that great.
I enjoyed yes. You're right, but I enjoyed the first Mortal Kombat, the movie from like 1991. I thought that was cool. The second one, no. The latest Mortal Kombat, I really enjoyed.
I've never seen any of them. The first one was with Jean-Claude in it, right? And then 91 was he in? Well, he was in Street Fighter. I'm getting confused with Street Fighter.
Yeah, I did like the first Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah, I've never seen any of the Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter films.
So we got to add these to your list.
Maybe. If I do, it's at the very bottom of the list.
It can go into your fine art collection.
I don't know if I consider those movies fine art, but I haven't seen them. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, like I say, the latest one I thought was really the special effects and the moves, like where Sub-Zero, freezes the person or whatever. I thought.
Oh yeah, with today's effects, I'm sure.
It was super cool.
Yeah, I can see that definitely being just massive with the effects. It's a cool storyline.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my arcade experience this past weekend. The one thing they didn't have that I would really like to go back and revisit, some things are better left in the past, but this one I think could adapt well with time. Skee-Ball.
Oh God!
See, it's not an arcade game, but it's
like air hockey. It's a skill game.
It's a skill game, but it's not annoying like air hockey.
Well, no, nothing is as annoying as air hockey.
Did you, when you were playing Skee-Ball, and you let the tickets come out of the machine, were you the person that just let the tickets keep running, so you had like this one giant wad that was piled up on the side of the machine?
Well, if I was any good at it, I probably would have. Mm-hmm. I don't think I played it too much because, again, you would get the tickets, and the tickets you could go collect prizes. And they were all your typical arcade prizes. I think
50,000 tickets for a spider ring.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, and none of the prizes did anything for me, so I wasn't really into it. But again, I think it's like air hockey. A lot of kids played that, and you want to hit the center, which is the 50, and just kids just knocking the 50 constantly. And it was a big, I guess the preteen version of, who's got the bigger dick, right? And they'd throw it on the table, right? That's how I interpreted it. It was very competitive. The other game that was, I think, similar to that in terms of it was a ticket game, but I don't think people played it as much, was Whack-A-Mole.
I remember that.
Yeah, just little moles popping up, and you take a little hammer and you smack
the mallet.
Yeah, the mallet, and try to hit as many as you can. I don't think a lot of people played that game. I mean, people did, but it wasn't like Skee-Ball. It wasn't like air hockey where it was super competitive.
It's kind of that one oddball game over in the corner that if everything else is busy, you might use it. I think I only saw Whack-A-Mole though at like Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, that was a game that you would see. Definitely, I'm sure if you went to like a Dave and Buster's, they would have it, right? That was the only. You would never see that like in a convenience store or any place like that. One of my all-time favorite games that just came to mind was 1942.
Yeah,
that was a fun game.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a jet fighting. Well, not jet. Obviously, it's 1942, World War II. So you're flying a World War II. It's not a B-52, but it's plane from
like a P-40 Warhawk or something like that. Yeah.
And
you could like move side to side, front to back.
Yeah. Drop bombs on boats and aircraft carriers underneath you, and all the enemy planes flying around. It was very much like kind of like Galaga. They'd come out kind of in a row and they'd spin, and then you'd have this sort of mini bosses, a slightly larger plane that's flying, and you'd have to shoot it a bunch of times.
Yep.
Explosions were really, really, really cool. It looked pretty good for that era. Legit, that was a fun game. And I know they had a million sequels. It was like 1943, and it was like 1944, and those types of sequels. Those are all the same design.
Those are all great games, though. One of the things that going to arcades that I have only tried twice, never won, is the claw machine.
Again, if you want to talk about scammy ass
They just want to take your money.
Yeah, and I mean those are popular today, but now it's it used to be stuffed animals. Now it's like they have
Shoes
iPhones.
and-
Yeah,
yeah.
they got really expensive shit.
Yeah, that nobody's ever going to get. That claw does not work.
Well, I know in Vegas I saw a claw machine that it had wads of money. So it's like, you can claw yourself out $500 and it was like wrapped up in like little balls or whatever.
Really?
Oh yeah. Wow. The adult version of that. You can go to
Did anybody, were they able to claw anything out?
I never saw anybody do it. I don't think I saw too many people try it. It's not like I'm standing around watching, people play a claw machine. On the internet, I've seen, people, because there's all these channels where people will go and, I think they do it to test the legitimacy. Like, how hard is it to get, if you're in Vegas and you want to get the claw machine? It's not just Vegas. It's also other places where they do have like high-end products in those machines that are expensive. And there's some guys that claim to be experts, like they can get it every time. They know how it works, and that others are testing it to see like how legitimate is it. And it's always the same kind of outcome. Like it'll bring it up, and that claw is so flimsy and weak, and eventually as it moves over to drop it into
It falls out.
it falls out before it gets there. You're like, oh shit, man. Yeah.
Stupid.
Yeah, I think I'm talking about games that were designed for failure. That one was, you couldn't tell me anything. That was designed for failure.
100%.
Yeah, that wasn't like, poor design. That was like, this machine is going to get us a lot of money and it's going to dispense very little, if anything at all.
No matter what is in it.
No matter how that claw grabs it.
Last time I tried that machine, I figured, you know what? I'm going to get the spiky deal that has lots of surface material to grab. Nothing, man. Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's ever messed with a claw machine, you just play it one time and you can just tell by how weak that claw is that it's not skill. Well, obviously there's got to be some skill to it. I'm sure there's experts out there have figured it out. But generally speaking, it's so weak, you're not going to get anything. You could totally wrap that claw around something. And it could be something lightweight like a stuffed animal. And it'll pick it up and it'll go up about 6-7 inches. And it looks like it's got its claws all the way around it. And you're like, yeah. And then just somehow, something just slips out. You're like, what the fuck?
Give me my money back.
I want my money back. This is a ripoff.
But it's been a fun walk down memory lane that, I think the old days are better in a lot of ways. And that, how there's arcade machines, in liquor stores or in pizza places, and
yeah, they still have them.
Some do,
yeah.
But they're usually now they're all sticky and gross, and you're like, I don't want to put my hand.
Well, they were sticky and gross back then, but when you're 12, you don't give a shit. You're sticky and gross too.
That's true. That's true.
An important announcement for you, so stay tuned.
Yo, that's some next level shit, bruh. So you got me. Big deal.
The internet's answer to a question no one asked. The Tilted Table with Sean and Joe.
Well, that was a fun walk down arcade memory lane.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, those memories are awesome.
Things that I haven't thought about in 30 plus years.
I know. See, that's all it takes is to get on the mic on this damn show, and we can bring back all the great memories, right? Folks, that is the show for today. I am Sean Landon Clark.
I am Joey Joe, a.k.a. the Fracky Mac.
And we want to thank you for tuning into another episode of The Tilted Table. Until next week, I'm out.
Peace.